And that, I mean, I've bitched about that before. It's like fucking every. It's like you can't even have a normal name like David because everybody starts. First, they just shorten it Dave, and then it's like Sailor Dave and Tennessee Dave and Tattoo Dave and
5 years.
And that's when people ask me, it's like, "Are you?" Well, I'm like, "No, I'm just David. Just call me David. Please don't call me Dave."
I thought you were 9-inch Dave.
No, well, that's different. You know,
that's different.
That's my friends. Duct tape used to be a good one. I love it. I love it. Ready? That's a good name. Good nicknames.
There's a girl that works with us named Inger.
Yeah, Inger.
Oh, yeah. I worked with Inger. Jason's wife? Yeah, we worked at Dragon Master.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Dwagon Master.
Yeah. I met both
Master of Dwagon.
She's got some interesting nicknames that people
still know.
Yeah. Like Oogie.
Oh, Oogie.
The girls came in, they got purified, and then they came in the next day and they were like, hey, where Oogie at?
Oogie.
Yeah. Like, oh.
It's good.
It must mean Inger.
Yeah, well, I think nicknames are...
All right, are we going?
As long as you don't give them to yourself. It's like if you start calling yourself.
What's the cool thing about a tattoo?
Captain David Evans. Like, seriously? Sailor David Evans.
That's what you guys should have an episode.
Sorry.
Is like picking
nicknames.
Your tattoo name.
We should wait. We could put that on our website.
What's that?
Pick your tattoo name. Just put a couple.
No.
Like,
you guys pick their tattoo.
Well, that's what I mean. Well, that's like, put the name in, just like when you get your Wu-Tang name.
Right. Yeah.
Like get your tattoo name.
Get it tattooed on you, 10% off.
I'd be like Sailor Blizzard. Hell yeah, Sailor Blizzard. Hell, that's what I'm talking about.
A generator.
I'll tattoo it.
Generator.
I'll tattoo it in kanji.
Tattoo
name generator.
Yeah, nice.
Just in case, That's what I was saying. It's like we know some of these guys that have really weird tattoo names. Like Rusty Needles. Why would you call yourself Rusty Needles? Or Buzzard. Buzzard.
Because buzzards are cool.
Like, what the Right.
Yeah. I don't feel like they can draw that well.
Fuck no. I don't want to touch me. Fucking Buzz is over here.
It's going to scratch me up.
No. Scratch it.
Hey, this is episode 50 again of Fireside Tats.
Yeah, you thought the first one.
So here's what happened. Someone on our staff and crew forgot to hit record.
It wasn't me.
Or hit record, and Samsung Electronics really screwed tonight up because we recorded 20 minutes of great audio, a great video.
You would have loved it.
If you just watch the video, just this shit, but you can't hear anything, you'd be like, I need to hear what they're talking about.
You can probably figure out from my hand.
But it's lost forever. So we're going to start over. So tonight, this is episode 50. We were real excited about it the first time around.
So
it's a little more disappointing this time.
No. Welcome back. That's what you got. You already let people down. Like, welcome back.
No. It was, we've had other episodes like this.
First of all, Jake, what are we talking about?
First off, congratulations on episode 50.
And congratulations. Thanks, man.
Yeah, and plus, I forgot.
Wait,
again. 20 minutes later, here's Paul. Look,
Paul.
If you were an earlier Firesider, you've caught Paul. He hasn't been on in several months. Probably maybe in the 20s was your last episode. Something like that. So it's been a little while.
I've been real busy.
Yeah. Well, we've blown up since then.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people only the old schoolers are going to know you at this point.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming, Paul.
Yeah, thanks for coming back for episode 50. So it's good to have Paul. Actually, I've learned since recording for 20 minutes before this, I've learned that I'm really glad to have Paul on because he's going to help a lot in this episode because we have different approaches. Because we're talking tonight about transitioning for beginning tattooers from smaller pieces into larger pieces, whether or not you want to do that, what the pros and cons are, which we had a long conversation. We'll probably condense about that. I don't want to go through it all again.
Yeah, it's fine. But when to start
and where to start.
When do you think you're ready?
Do you want to do it? If so, what are the challenges?
Do you want to do it? Yeah.
So we talked a little bit already about all this, but we talked about the pros and cons of moving into larger pieces. Kind of like to condense it a little bit, and then I'll let everyone go. Like the advantages of starting and finishing a tattoo and not seeing it again. And the disadvantages of that. I mean, the advantages of working on something over and over and seeing how it comes back, how it heals over months or even years if you're really slow about it, and mastering your technique based on how your tattoo ages over time and things like that. So, and there are pros and cons to both.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, you don't really want shit to take years.
No, you don't want to, and that is a huge
And then,
downside.
but like sometimes
because it's
like,
not all up to you.
Yeah, it ends up kind of happening that way.
Yeah.
But and it's all about planning, right?
Right.
I think, like you just said, sometimes stylistically, you change, and so if you are seeing pieces come back every once in 6 months or once a year, you are going to have problems.
Especially if you're just transitioning to those bigger pieces, you're really going to make some changes quickly. Where like in 6 month spans, you're going to like, oh, I don't draw like that anymore. What am I? Like I didn't know what I was doing when I drew that.
Yeah. So we were saying some of the pros is like
come back and wait 5 years.
Yeah.
But the reason, some of the pros for like smaller tattoos is, of course, that instant gratification you get.
Yeah.
You're done. You get to see it. They're happy.
You get a finished photo that other people get to look at.
Right.
Yeah. And that is
like
nice.
it.
Yeah.
Often, like when you have bigger pieces, you know that when they walk out the door, it's not finished. You're trying to get it to a certain place where when people look at it, they don't go, "What the hell is going on?" And we were talking about that. It's like often trying to finish smaller pieces, smaller sections, instead of doing an all-over approach, which is a lot of how we learned. You know, you start in a clockwise, like dark to light. And then
in large ones. In large pieces. So you were working in if you were doing a half sleeve, you were working the entire space. Just
that's
to get all
often what happens. So you'd get 2-3 hours in, and you'd have blue and purple, or brown and red, or whatever. It's like,
and your client left to explain that it's not finished.
It's not done.
It's not done. We got more.
Well, of course, with smaller pieces, you get boom, instant gratification.
Yeah. So you focus a lot more on smaller pieces. You get a lot of instant gratification.
I've seen some big. I've seen some big Paul up pieces. I'm not saying that.
You like to work in 2 and 3 hours at the most, and you like to see a finished product.
Yeah, I mean, I'll work longer than that if I know that, like, if it's going to be 5 hours and then I'm done.
And you're done.
Right.
Yeah. But like a lot of that, like traditional kind of stuff, like it's set up to do that.
Yeah.
And I don't know. That's I guess why I like it, because you can kind of like haphazardly like put stuff on there. And it just kind of looks right because, all those other guys have been doing it wrong for so long.
But professionally, haphazardly.
Yeah. And that's the trick. The only way that you can pull that haphazardly style off is to be very freaking solid at it.
Right.
Like everything, all your peppering has to be clean. All your lines have to be solid. Otherwise, it looks scratchy. But if you can pull that is the cool trick about traditional tattooing, is that like the people that invented it couldn't draw for shit. They were all terrible. And so they just like made up these ways that it looked halfway cool. And now if you can pull those ways off and do it super clean, then and you can make a great living for yourself. It's like, people love that stuff. And it stood the test of time. It holds up forever.
It does. And usually, especially in some of those older, we'll say old school tattoos, they often use a lot of primary colors and stuff that are perfect, classic. They stay.
But transitioning,
contrast.
a lot of contrast. So, transitioning to bigger tattooing, we talked about it a little while ago. The
20 minutes ago.
Hey, just keep bringing this up. It's just like
this is even better though. I think it's even better.
But we did talk about like trying to transition those tricks and techniques to larger pieces, and how sometimes the high contrast, high key. Everything in your face design kind of backfires on you in larger pieces because you need those areas of relief for your eye. And that really is a design trick, which is what led us into your first point about the biggest trick, in your opinion, the biggest thing to get used to is designing in the round or designing large areas.
I think often that's what the first thing that tattooists will hit that wall, because they cannot see. If you cannot start drawing in the round, if you can't start seeing the body as like we were talking before in panels, I love that, because it really is. Every muscle is a separate panel, and those panels interact. And it's like, if you can't imagine how lines or your image is on extreme contours, you're going to have problems. I think that's what the first hang up between getting to that small tattoo to large tattoo really is. It's like, often we were talking before, it's like some people's approach to it is they take that same image, when they blow it up, it has no relationship to the map that they have. It's like it's often just plunked into a place and there's not a lot to kind of push it into that space. And then, like you said, how someone gets from doing little ticky tricks at, say, 1x1 or 2x2 and do that at 5x5 and 6x5, or something like that.
Yeah, your level of technical ability has to multiply in a giant way to pull off the same trick in a 1 inch square or 1 square inch as opposed to 4 or 5 square inches to get even a solid feel of color or a peppery blend or whatever it is, like,
or a good feel of shading or something. If you're not comfortable with like just putting in the wash work within 2 or 3 inches at a stroke, that's it. That can be a little intimidating for some people.
You multiply that by about 5 and try to pull off the same effect, and you're going to be fighting an uphill battle, especially early on in your career when you're just not that technically sound. So,
and that's what I'm
designing to the space. Like, if you need to break that up, recognize like, that's going to turn out to be like 4 inches of baby blue. I probably shouldn't try that. Right. Let me just like let this fall out into skin tone, then I'll pick up something else right here. And like, it's a good reason to make design changes.
And actually, that's, you can even kind of tell from like your chest and other pieces now. It's like leaving a little bit of skin tone. The larger you get, makes a lot more sense. It helps move your eye, and it definitely kind of pushes and pulls your negatives and darks to lights. It's an amazing effect.
So it seems to help stuff age too.
Yeah, and let it breathe a little bit. Like just in between, so it's not all
kind of fade out. But like if you've got it already where it's kind of like fading into your skin, then it's just going to get softer and nicer looking over time. Like, may not be as vibrant, but it'll still get the point across.
Yeah, it's just like laying a ground for a painting. Like if you want to lay if you want a warm scene, you lay like a burn umber, or an umber or something like that, and start working with that, and leave areas of it. Like the masters would leave areas with an underpainting, and that is basically the underpainting. You know what I mean? It just kind of like ties everything into the same environment. I had a hard time coming to terms with that, and it's really taken my torso to convince me. I've watched Jeff Insminger do it, and I really used to try. Like, I knew the area I wanted to cover, and if I needed a light skin tone, man, I mixed a light skin tone and I packed it into the skin. Like, I made sure every square inch was covered, and what I did was just make I think they look fine for what they are, but they look like stickers. They look like they're just like on you. They're not part of you at all. And this has convinced me that like leaving skin tone, and it's really almost like a trick. The more you can leave, like the more skin tone I can leave and still pull off the effect, I feel like I won. You know what I mean? I'm a winner. Not for like a time saving standpoint, but just like the more that it unifies with the person, the like bigger clean areas I can use and then get something else heavier. I'm like, oh man, that really worked. And I didn't have to fill that space.
Yeah, right. And I didn't do it by doing anything.
That's right.
Yeah. I think it also helps pull together what we've talked about before, is like that kind of foreground, midground, background, how to move things inside of a plane, even on a flat surface. And a lot of people, like I said, if you're not comfortable with that, that's one of the first things you really need. Is like, one, transition between planes, like we were talking about before, and then two, like how to move the eye. Like often those negative spaces help move your eye, not just the dark things, because that tends to kind of flatten in places, but those are really like your go-tos. Like, oh, where's this going? Watch the negatives, you'll see.
Yeah, that's right.
If you look through somebody's whatever.
Yeah. So we've been through this once, but so that's that's the first. That's kind of your first point, was like to design to the space.
Design to the space.
We used, I think something that I don't think we said just now, but we said the first time around was you were talking about wings. You were talking about something like wings going on your shoulder, up your shoulder, and I thought a good example was like planning for how those wings were going to sit on your shoulder. Where like one's going to cut down over your chest, and the other one's going to sit high on your shoulder. And on paper, that might look really weird,
really unusual.
And so if you drew something perfectly symmetrical, thinking it was like, because you're used to drawing just for a
flop on there,
they're almost going to like crisscross each other, do something weird. One's going to crawl all up your,
and they will not fit the space. There's no way.
And so that's what I thought was a really important point. Like, you have to start mapping space, and the way I call it is drawing to planes, or like what you said, drawing in the round. It's the same thing, but like it's not the same as drawing to a tattoo that sits all on one muscle, all on one plane, and like relying on the symmetry of that person's body to give the illusion of the symmetry. Because once you're really like making some crazy warps, that symmetry makes no sense anymore. It gets really ugly really fast. So that was the biggest thing I took from.
Yeah, and we were talking about basically, it's like if you saw like an object that was on an arm and then went over on a two-dimensional surface, like a flat piece of paper, it makes no sense. You often know if you were drawing on someone and dimensionally doing that, it makes sense because you see it instantly on there. Right. But if you flatten that image back out, it's so warped. You wouldn't. I mean, a lot of people can't get it, and that's when you have to remind them. This is going on around. This is going on around. This is going on around. Yeah. This will move your eye through the scape wherever you're working. That's usually what happens. You kind of have to remind people why these objects are there, why they move through spaces, and a lot of times is you have to keep that in mind, like what they can see and what they can't see. If you start putting all the nicest stuff on the back of their arm or places they can't see, it's like, oh, what's the point in that? You know, like everybody else gets to see it, not you, buddy. And I think that's type of how to move your eye through a scene or through a plane, like taking advantage of some of the musculature and stuff.
Yeah, that reminds me of another good trick or a must for designing large and tattooing large tattoos. Finish all the stuff they can't see. Leave something on the front unfinished until the very end, because if you finish the front of their arm, they're never going to come back. They'll leave this shit undone for the rest of their lives. As long as it looks finished from the front, don't finish the front. Leave the eye undone.
I think that's like 2201 kind of stuff. You shouldn't be just laying that out yet, man.
We just blew some beginner's mind right there.
No, often it's I think that goes hand in hand with like I often again we'll talk about Sarah for half a second. Your apprentices, if you're not telling them, especially, it's like you want to advance your work. You don't want to just be doing small pieces. If you start looking around and you see what pieces that are old pieces or other stuff, it's like try to fix them. Try to get someone back, and that's one of those things. It's like maybe you can't do big pieces right now, but you can often make, say, a foreground, a midground, and background in 3 different sessions and get just as much out of in a smaller pieces, and try to push the tattoo a little bigger as a start so that you're getting more and more comfortable with doing large pieces. Just try to get your comfort zone, whether it be 3 hours or 5 hours, down, and then maybe try to expand, like you said, slowly, so that you're not doing the biggest thing, but you're comfortable in each session that you're doing. It makes a lot more sense. And for her, it's one of those things. It's like if you remind people that, oh, I can do a background to transition into that other piece, or I can do something that pushes it a little farther. A lot of people are into that. They want suggestions because they don't want to have to, no offense, they just don't want to have to think it all themselves. They might have a certain clue or a certain idea, but how you do that is really up to you. Like, you can put the minimal effort in, or you can try to push the design and see if they're in for it too. And that's what I think happens a lot. I overdraw a lot of times, and I tell them, it's like, I can do whatever you want that size, or I can fill your entire sleeve for the same price in that first session. You can have that nice little $150, $200, $300 tattoo, or I can line your entire half sleeve for close to that above price, and then you get a lot more out of it. You get a lot more image out of it. It's often like not just pushing yourself, but helping your client kind of think that way too, if you're getting into bigger pieces.
And if they're interested, especially when they're talking, like, I want to turn this into a sleeve. That's what I think, that kind of stuff.
I think some of our apprentices, what happens is that
let's just draw a sleeve.
They start plunking them in between places, and then it's like, well, why don't you talk to them about pushing the rest of it, like filling the space, like that. Especially an up and coming artist, you've got to get used to pushing them between other tattoos and reclaiming space. Trying
to find a way to work.
That's what I mean. A lot of times you get there and it's like, let me
just like starting your first big tattoo.
Approaching it that way too would probably make it easier and kind of pick out your main images. And trying to figure out where you want to like if you do a bunch of that hyper contrast kind of stuff, where you want to have that happening and then have it be softer,
right?
So it breaks it up.
Well, how do you, as someone that has a more traditional approach and you don't do a lot of painterly foreground, background, a lot of stuff. I mean, you do foreground, background, but not like.
That stuff's hard.
Well, there's that. But like, how do you, when you're transitioning, because you've done, I've seen a lot of bigger pieces of yours too. You still keep a traditional approach. What changes in your mindset? Anything? I mean, do you just try to blow what you already do up bigger, or do you think about like value and stuff?
I try to keep it simple. So like I'm gonna have this image in the foreground, and it's gonna either be really dark and really like cool or something, and I'm going to have a bunch of brighter, warmer colors behind it, or I'm going to do the reverse of that. I'm going to have all my warmer colors in the foreground, my cooler colors in the background. Like everything's just real.
So you're creating space, but you're creating space through like the traditional tricks that you know.
Right. Yeah.
And your darks to lights.
And they work. Yeah. That's a big thing, man. It can be, I mean, the colors can be whatever. If you get your values right, you can make we may have already talked about it on a podcast, but a guy that I did a painting workshop from, part of his curriculum for his students is to paint 3 self-portraits. Like one is green, one is red, one is blue or whatever. But the trick is that no one outside of us should recognize that's a blue self-portrait. It should look like a picture of you. It should not look blue. So the point with that is like local color and temperature and all that stuff has far more to do with its relationship to its surroundings than it does to anything else. So I can paint a blue self-portrait and you would never think it was blue. You would think it was me at night, but you would never recognize it was a blue self-portrait. And so understanding those like color relationships, how value reacts, I mean like how value plays in, it's really cool. I mean, if you learn how to work with that stuff, you can do some really fancy stuff.
And I think it becomes more and more important the bigger that piece gets.
The bigger the piece is.
Often, like I said, doing a singular piece where there's a bunch of white around it, that probably doesn't come into play a whole lot. But, man, the second you get over, 6x6, you're going to need a light source like we talked about before. You're going to need to be concentrated on where that is and then how that reacts to the objects that are in there. Yeah, and that's, we've all talked, I love, like, say, repetition of pattern. I love repetition of color. I love... often if you don't have an interior light source, it has to be a really high contrast exterior light source, and that helps you with your, say, colors and stuff. But if you're, like I said, if you're not, again, thinking on that level where you're like, okay, these objects have to be in dimension, and then they have to have some type of light source, like, especially if there's multiple objects. There's no way that they're in a vacuum of light, How to figure that out, how to create contours, it becomes more and more important, because the second you don't do that, things tend to flatten out and they don't make sense. It's an almost instant read that you cannot.
That was the second point that I was just forgetting that we talked about the first time. Your point was having getting used to having a consistent light source over a large area, and that's exactly what you're talking about now.
I stole it.
David stole that idea. That was Paul's idea the first time around.
I was just trying to. I was waiting.
Yeah, but having a consistent light source is so important, because when you start like treating a big tattoo as a lot of little tattoos shoved together, then you end up with a really weird flat tattoo. Like everything, light has to be.
I think what happens is, like you said before, then or maybe you said, they tend to look like more like stickers or almost fake tattoos.
Completely unrelated.
Right.
So that was. Did you want to?
Well, I just think it gets weird when you go, like if you're working on the front.
I think that's when we actually stopped. He was starting to talk about the interior lighting.
Go to the underside or something. It's like, well, what do I do with my light source now? Like, do I drop it out? Is it darker because it's more on the side? I don't know. Yeah. That's where it can come in, like trying, like I guess what you guys were saying about design and trying to figure out, like, well, maybe I just need a break in there.
Yeah. I think that helps
shape or something.
Something negative, something whatever, something that changes, something that blocks the light, whatever, something like that.
The other day, just as an example, I started like a 3/4 sleeve that's all aquatic stuff, and it's like, how do you put light underwater? Well, you have to have your light source really high, where it's actually, this is all underwater. There's no objects. Above you. The deeper it goes, the darker it gets. Maybe the barest of light. It's like, how do you represent that? How do you start to transition huge, just like painterly colors down a volume of space? It's the same way. Like, that's an instant light source read. You should know where that is, and then you should take advantage of that. But all the undersides of those objects are not going to have the same light source. There's no glowing thing on the bottom, unless you're just an angler fish or some shit like that.
Unless some reflective light. But the thing to remember is that, like, the deeper you go, the highlight on that fish is not as light as the highlight.
Hell no, it is. Don't.
Because you will look like a moron.
If you got white highlights at the bottom of your ocean, something is fucking wrong.
There are no white highlights at the bottom of the ocean.
So that's another thing that it's like, and often you see that. You see this like huge blue scape that makes no sense. You're like, wow, that's all 2 blues, and it's 12 inches of it or more. You're like, wow, that's
like that blue didn't change
that's
at all.
amazing.
Right. Like, it didn't lose.
I mean, you say the blue of the water. It's all light refraction and stuff like that. But that's a point. It's like if you're making a dimensional scene and you have to have a light source and it's trickling through water, you have to remember that. Light doesn't travel as fast. It doesn't travel as deep.
That's right. The best way to transition all this stuff is to look at the way shit actually looks.
Right.
Draw it.
I've talked about.
Stop inventing what your tattoos look like. Stop inventing what light does, and look at what light does, and try to reproduce it in a drawing.
Because I'm going to guarantee you Google stingray underwater, they're going to show you exactly, or shark, whatever. That's the point. It's like get a really natural effect. Try to work that into your work. But if you just whole scale, like, oh, I'm just going to ignore that and do whatever the fuck I want, you're going to have problems. People are going to instantly notice it.
Fish right here. I think it'd look cool. It's like, well, everything got dark up until that.
So I guess maybe that's another thing for the pro. Like if you're just transitioning, that's a lot to remember. But you're going to have to put that in there. You're going to have to remember that.
You have to think of that stuff like kind of on the spot sometimes, because you have to be able to direct somebody into like, well, I know you want the head of this dragon on the underside of your arm, but maybe you should put it on the front because that's what everybody's going to see. Right?
And that's the thing too. It's like, you hear people, especially, they have this idea in their head that makes no fucking sense. And you're like, I can't even imagine that. How the hell am I supposed to draw that? I tell them that too. It's like, if I can't get an instant, like, oh, I kind of see what you're talking about. I'm like, there's no way. I'm not, obviously, maybe I'm not the guy that you think that But I think that comes into it. Some people, they think they know what they want. They have no clue because they've never seen it. I ask people, it's like, have you ever seen that on anybody? And they're like, no. It's like, well, there's a reason. There's a goddamn reason that's not. And
that's another thing that people will do, though. If you're an artist transitioning to larger pieces, you're going to have to talk to people about larger pieces. And a lot of times they'll invent shit just to fill the space. And you have to really, even more so than normal, get down to the root of what their actual idea is and get out of the filler that they have for their entire arm and just think like, okay, what's important about this? What do you really want to see? Because sometimes, here's a perfect example. You wanted a dragon on your neck, right? Like a whole dragon.
Oh, yeah.
Dimitri's just like, no, my friend.
No way.
We're not putting a dragon on your neck. It's like,
it was a way better choice.
Because he recognized what you wanted. Right. He thought about the way he could design it best. And he's like, you're not getting a dragon, you're getting a dragon head. And he made the right decision, right? Yeah. So you have to be comfortable.
You made the right decision.
Yeah, you made the right decision. You have to be comfortable making those decisions for people because they come in with this like predefined idea of exactly what they want. It's because they had to build up to like make the commitment to spend the time and the money and walk in the shop and so they had to know what they wanted. But they don't really know what they want. And really, if you try to give them everything they want in a tattoo that's going to take you 45 hours, you're going to want to shoot yourself in the face by the end of that tattoo.
And that's what. How many times have you had somebody come in though that have said that I've been thinking about this tattoo for 3 years, 5 years, and they don't have one piece of paper, not one thing, not an idea written down, and it's like all of a sudden it's like, I had this dream and it was this thing, like for real. It's like, how long have you been thinking? Didn't write anything down, didn't do any background. But I think that maybe that's not. We're not blaming it on the clients or anything for that, but I think that
just
happens.
Be comfortable
it's like
asking questions.
I think what it happens. Be comfortable with your own work too. Know your own work, and then take, like you said, if people often come in with 1,000 things they want on them, and you have to kind of pick and choose what makes a scene or what is actually the tattoo. That often is like the case. They'll come in with a cornucopia of ideas, and you have to trim it down. It's like we all talk. It's like you'll get this tattoo that's like, oh, I want this sleeve, and it's like I want a Celtic knot, and I want a tree, and I want some kanji, and I want I want a bat for my best friend. I'm like,
exactly.
None of that makes any fucking sense. It doesn't go together. Let's try to do something for you.
My daughter plays volleyball too. If you can
right. If I could have a soccer ball in there 14. Too, because I really love soccer. Okay, no. Yeah. And often you do, at that point, you have to take over, because if you do that tattoo, you are an idiot. You're just wasting your time on. I mean, not wait. I'm just saying that you can you should pick your work. No. You should make sure that you know your work and be comfortable with doing it on somebody. And then if you have to talk them into something, I think that you should be confident enough to do that. You should just say, this is not, I don't see it, I can't draw it, I'm not going to draw it, or whatever. We often have to say, come back, think about it a little bit more. Put some stuff down on paper.
Bring me some images that I can get an idea what you're, because like you're saying, I have no idea what you're talking about.
That's what I often try to show people too. It's like they have this idea in their head about contour around objects, and they have no idea what they're talking about. Or people, I've had a guy that was like, I want my arm as a column. It's like, are you kidding me? It's not a symmetrical object. Right. Even if I made straight lines down you gain 10 pounds or lose 10 pounds or gain a muscle. Fuck, it doesn't look realistic at all. But they have it in their head that somehow that this is going to have all this dimension, and like, no, that's a horrible idea.
Sorry. What about?
On my forearm. I mean, I can't remember who that was, but sorry if I mentioned.
From a more technical side.
All right.
All right, so you're transitioning to taking on a big piece, and you have a certain number of hours to get something lined, okay? And you haven't lined that much before. You're doing more line work than you've done.
You're going to do a lot more
tattoo so far. So, I know the way that I work. A lot of times I line more at the end, so I kind of zip right through, and I really don't care what the line work looks like at the end of a particular sitting. From a traditional
You're just putting it on there.
I'm just trying to get a permanent stencil on there. I'm just trying to get something on there that I can work from. I'm going to line it at the end, and I just trust that they're going to trust me to make it look good.
Probably be fine.
They'll be fine.
You'll be fine.
But from your approach with your style, what do you really try to make sure that you have? Do you not let a big tattoo go without line weights where you want them, or do you just try to get something?
Help it, yeah.
So that's important to you as a structure on the
front end. I think that helps in reminding me later what I was trying to do here. Because you can put little I'm not talking about just your hard lines. You can get all your big thick lines or whatever under your main image, and then maybe have some gray lines that kind of map out some shapes that you want in the background or something.
But you want your important lines to be finished lines by the end of the season.
If I can, at least a first pass at it, and then I'll come back. And if there's a shit ton of fucking line work everywhere, And I guess maybe that's what you're talking about, is just knowing being realistic with how much can I really do in one session.
The thing that I used to have a problem with, and it was I watched David a lot when I was first lining big pieces. And you would go through with a 3 and line everything, and then you come back with a 7, 3 and a 7,
usually 5.
I think we're using.
I did have some 3s, but I usually went from 3, 5, 7.
They were 3s.
I go from 3, 5, 7s, maybe.
Completely off the point.
Off the point.
You were using a smaller liner and coming back with a bigger liner.
I still use a tight 5.
And so I felt the need. I felt the need back then to make sure that I had some variation in line weight. And it wasn't a big deal in smaller pieces, but when I moved to bigger pieces, I felt like, I have to get a solid thin line in, and I have to get a solid heavy line in, and maybe even some gray wash lines, and it needs to look like a finished kind of piece. And I know that works for a lot of people, and I know you still have a lot, David, have a lot of you still kind of approach that. Even your big pieces have some variations.
Yes, that's true.
It put a lot of stress on me, and I got away from it. I just started I don't care, as long as I can tell there's supposed to be a mark right there. That's all I'm worried. I'm just trying to get through it this first time.
Yeah, but look what you do at the end, though.
That's it, because I moved that to the back end.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I guess what I'm saying is there's
changed when you do it.
From the line standpoint, we have 3 completely different approaches to big tattoos.
It's true. I think sometimes what happens is realistically, tonight I worked on Josh for about 4.5 hours. I was lining his torso, but by the time I got done lining it with a thinner needle on the bottom, by the time I get to the top, if I break out a 7 or a 9 at that point and try to go back into it, he is not going to let me. There is no way. So it's for me, that's what I told him. It's next session we'll bump a couple of lines up and maybe start the shade, or we can line the other. But it's often you get into a piece where if you are 4 hours removed from a place that you've been in, you do not want to go back into it. They will not let, or
just do it while you're going.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Often, when I'm on this one though, it was so much line work. Again, instead of some of the lines I'd go back and scumble up a little, but they're not quite the line weight that I'll keep when it's done. So again, we've talked about that at the end. don't get so wrapped up in what it looks like right then. That's a process at this point, and you have to get your client used to that too. That it's a process. When they walk out, that there's more to be done. Not that, oh, by the way, it's not done.
Yeah.
And so often people will go like, well, what are you going to do with that? I mean, like, it's like 6 miles from where you're actually working.
Yeah.
And so
I get that a lot.
When I'm done.
Right. Yeah. And I tell people at this point now remember this.
Like,
if you're just starting to do this,
you
you
need
need
a
to
color
convince.
study. You're just going to have to trust me.
Yeah. Early on, you need to be able to convince people that you may have to do some color studies. You probably need them for yourself, for one thing, and your clients aren't going to know you well enough.
I think when you first start doing them, you need to do.
I think we've said that. Even Sarah and apprentices now. I think they do better as long as they've done a gray wash and a little bit of a color study, and they stick to
light
it.
Source,
Yeah.
The second they start doing impromptu stuff is when they have problems.
Yeah, it's
like stick to a plan.
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
Your plan.
Stick to a plan.
Make a plan.
Even if you got to write it on the side of your damn thing, just stick to a plan, and you'll have a lot more success. I can almost guarantee you. You're gonna get a lot more done.
I do at this point when I'm working up here and someone asks me what this is going to be down here. I'm really honest because I work a lot out as I'm going, and I don't try to make any secret about that. But I go like, well, I know I want this to be this, so that means that's going to be dark. So this is probably going to be light because I know what I want this to be. Right. So I can kind of guess what that's going to be from a value standpoint. Now, what color it is, I have no fucking idea about that yet. Like I'll figure that out when I get other. There's some stuff I really don't know until I'm just almost like I've put off some important part to the very end just because I know all my values. I've kind of worked these colors, and I'm like, man, where do I want that to be? Really high key? Do I want to really push this, or do I already like what I did up here and I want this to go away a little bit? You know what I mean? I'm still kind of making those decisions all the way until the very end.
I think that's part of probably that painterly technique too, though. Yeah. You're adjusting to the color and adjusting to the light and adjusting to it as it goes along, which is that's really important for a bigger piece. I mean, some smaller people, like I said, you're done. You can't really adjust it after that. Yeah. I guess we didn't really talk about why you would want to start doing bigger pieces. It's like there's there are pros. It's like, well, that's what I mean. It's like, how much do you want to expand your work, and how much do you want to, often once you get bigger, you get clients that start wanting bigger pieces. That's the thing. If you're not comfortable doing, and you're having to turn down things you're not comfortable with, or you're doing pieces that you're not really probably capable of doing, that's when it becomes probably the problem. Like, when does that transition happen?
Yeah, when does it happen? And
one, you have to be comfortable with it. Two, you got to want to do it, and then attack it. Just absolutely attack it. Try to, like you should have, like we were saying, if you're getting to that point, you should probably try to work on some at least gray studies, probably a color study. Because it'll just behoove you, so you know where your darks and lights are going to be, so you know how some of these colors are going to react to each other.
It'll help you move a lot quicker too.
Absolutely. You can look over and just be comfortable. You can just go, oh yeah,
that's what I'm doing.
Right.
Yep.
It's right there.
And you've already made some decisions, and you can always push those in another direction. You see what this looks like, so you're like, man, maybe if I made it a little darker here, that should have been a little darker. So you're still improving that drawing. It's not like you're just making a photocopy. Like you've built it up one time and made it something, and you've recognized what you liked and don't like about it. And it's not that you can't tweak that during the tattoo and make it your own, even again, but at least you have something to go by. At least you really understand. You shouldn't be thinking about where light's going to hit. I think that you really need to understand how light reveals form through your tattoo, because if you're making the decision on how high the cheekbone actually sits, like on whatever, whether it's traditional, whether it's like a mask, or whether it's a portrait, if you're making that decision on the spot, you're putting unneeded stress on yourself. That's a decision that could have easily been made when you drew the head. Like figure that out right then.
It's true.
Mark it out. And there's no reason to be making those decisions.
Shadows are going to be, what's going to cast a real heavy drop shadow over what, because that kind of stuff can really add a lot of like quick volume or whatever. Can really push something forward.
Right. Or destroy it if you move it if you get it in the wrong spot.
Right. Yeah. If you got two, this one's coming up here and this one's down here, it's not going to make any fucking sense.
a lot of times too, it's like if you get it up to a certain point and you really want to remind yourself of the darks and lights, and you don't, or you're not doing that stuff on the side, it's like you can easily get some Sharpies or other stuff out and easily like at least show you where your darks and lights are on the person, so you remind yourself like what are supposed to be the light sources and where your dark to shadows. I mean, if you're not comfortable, like I said, the bigger your tattoo gets, the easier that gets. Break some pins out, start actually working into it. It'll stay there for a minute or two, especially with some of the, I mean, I do that with green or with like a pink, some sharp, just to remind myself what some of these areas are.
Do you draw much on people, or you try to really be planned out?
Oh yeah, I try to avoid that at all costs. I mean, I will. I've done it before. It's just that it wipes away so quick.
It does. That's true.
Damn right it does.
I don't like to make a big mess. Just be able to wipe it all down, and then it's all clean, and then I can oil a bunch of ink all over it and then wipe it off.
Well said.
Yeah, no, there's a lot to that. They make some stuff now that I haven't tried. That's
the spray-on stuff? That stuff helps.
Does it?
Yeah, a lot. Like it'll make it I don't know what the hell
it's the same people that make stencil stuff, Mike DeVries or something. Yeah.
But it's like almost like spraying hairspray on it. It makes it kind of sticky.
Oh,
but it
like feels sticky when you draw it or when you tattoo?
Well, yeah, like when like I noticed when maybe I just sprayed too much on there.
It's broken.
Like when I put my hands back down on there, I can feel my glove kind of pulling away or whatever a little bit.
I've never tried it.
But it worked.
I wonder if I could use Spray Fix.
You should, man.
Probably just spray.
I think you can probably use
that's
Aquanet.
I mean, seriously, Aquanet, that's hair. I mean, that's what some people use to use out of,
some Aquanet.
because Aquanet used to be cheaper than workable fixatives. So when I went to college, that's what people did on their drawings all the time.
That's what we used on charcoal drawings too, Aquanet. That's right. Now that you say it.
If you haven't heard of that,
there you go.
Don't use it. It's a horrible idea. Just get some Spray Fix.
Oh, what did we miss? We're 40 minutes in, which makes us really about an hour in.
No.
We're 40 minutes in on our second episode.
I know, but... Oh, okay. Oh, really? Oh.
On the second time around.
Well, I guess we could try to just kind of slowly wrap it up. Pros, cons. You remember any of them?
Oh, yeah. I remember them all. Do you remember any of them?
Well,
designed to this. Learn how to design in the round.
What's your
design to panels.
What's
I
your
thought that was a good one.
First, if you like doing 3-hour tattoos, stick with it. There's nothing wrong with that. You will absolutely make a lot of freaking money.
There are people that
there are plenty of people that will come in and leave and be happy, kiss you on the cheek, name their babies after you.
What's the Sasha Unisex? Do you follow her at all? She does these kind of watercolor things. Nothing is bigger than this. It'll be like a fox. It's like kind of whatever. And I mean, I know she's just absolutely killing it. She's probably booked out for 45 years,
probably
doing the exact same thing. I mean, it's super cool. I don't mean to put. I really like the work.
No, that's what I mean. It's like
she's nailed it.
If that is your thing,
Andres Acosta doing all of his his rose morphs. Like that guy's killing it on rose morphs.
Like I said, same thing. 3-hour tattoos. Man. Boom.
Whatever.
Boom.
$800 minimum, 3-hour tattoo.
Hey.
Do about 3 a day.
$800 minimum.
I don't think it's that much.
I'm sure it's plenty. I bet you it's higher.
I gotta start doing something different.
I bet you it's higher.
I bet they know those guys from that. Red Devil. Was that who? Is he? Red Dagger. Sorry,
He's
Red
really good,
Dagger.
Man. Those things are. I don't mean to. I wasn't trying to be negative about Andres Acosta or Sasha Unisex because I really like both of them.
I mean, we're saying that there is nothing wrong with that. If you are comfortable with that, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, you can do your big piece when you do it at home. You can paint. You can do whatever you want. If that's your outlet. I'm just saying, if you need...
I think it's easy to do now that I did a lot of bigger stuff.
It's easier to come back to smaller stuff?
Oh, yeah. Because, like, you're more confident about the way stuff works.
Right.
You've had time to, see stuff, like you were saying earlier, come back.
That's one of the biggest values. You need to see things come back.
Actually worked.
Yeah, we talk about that even for one-sitting tattoos. Like, make sure when you're starting that you see your finished tattoos as they age. Even the ones that you hated from the start. Like at least at least you're seeing what happens to blown out lines.
That's the first thing that we ask people, especially with their apprentices and stuff. It's like, please come back in 2 to 3 weeks. Just take a look.
Yeah.
Right. No big deal. Most people are fine with that.
You got a discounted tattoo. All we ask is that we see it when it's healed.
Yeah. Some people don't come back because they're perfectly happy, and then some people come back because they want, they said, hey, you want to look at it?
Yeah. We didn't talk, I don't want to get into it too much, but we didn't talk about being comfortable with bigger needle configurations. And I think that not everybody's going to be able to
We didn't talk about that.
We did before the show. But not everyone's going to be comfortable, or almost no one besides David Evans is going to be comfortable using a 7 mag on a full back piece. Get used to using some bigger configurations. Make sure that your machine can push the bigger configurations.
These guys are horrible.
Yeah.
Well, this thing's
mean-spirited.
It's important in big tattoos, I think.
Yeah, there's a lot of effects that you can do with those that I tried to do for a long time with. I mean, I'm just not. I can't do it with 7 mag.
Yeah, grab a 13, grab a 15.
Yeah.
15 is what you were saying you like a lot.
Seems like it's like a little bit easier, on the skin or something, because you can just knock that area out.
Just getting out of there so much faster.
But if you're going to have a bunch of kind of stuff going on, you need, a 7 mag, then fucking use a 7 mag. Don't try and cram it.
But I think it would be easy with a 7 mag if you weren't used to it to try to work too much detail into an entire. You know how we were talking about using high key colors or icon. Yeah. If you're working with a super tiny setup all the time, you're going to have a tendency to put all these little things through the entire tattoo, and you're going to flatten the tattoo out because of it. Because you didn't want to do the big solid field that was necessary for that eye relief or whatever. Or the.
So remember that.
Too.
Remember that. We're not talking
mag and then whatever big mag you want.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
All right. Well, it's like that's probably another key to if you want to start beefing up, get you some bigger needles configurations too.
I think so.
Start being comfortable with them.
All right, we just this episode was not. It was good. It was all over the place. I thought.
No, it wasn't. Hopefully, I got a lot out of it.
Yeah.
First, if you're not comfortable doing it, don't do it. Get ready.
Make sure you have a reason to do it. Don't do it because you feel like it's like the next graduated step.
And I still say it's start thinking in the round. If you cannot start thinking about how an object moves from the inside to the outside or the outside to the inside, if you can't see that in your head, get used to it. You got to
start drawing real stuff from real life. Make sure you have.
That's a great one.
Make sure you have you have a light source that you're following. Do you have anything else besides?
Green Lantern sucks.
Oh yeah, not in general. Just one Green Lantern sucks.
Ryan Reynolds.
Thank you. Perfect.
All right.
Yeah. People up.
Yeah.
Number 50.
By the way, Ryan Reynolds, episode 51.
Sweet. Thanks, man. Hey. Is that what you're going to entitle it? Ryan? No, sorry about that.
No.
Often we kind of lose track of what we're talking about.
All right. Thank you, guys. Episode 50 is in the books.
Yeah. Wait. Thumbs us up. Give us all the things, all the feedback.
Facebook,
if you have any
Instagram.
questions.
On the internet.
Instagram us. Internets us.
Thanks again to Paul. We wish he'd come out more.
Yeah, and what the hell? We had all these people. We had all these other people planned. None of them showed up.
Nobody cares about the show. Just Paul.
Yeah. So one of them's definitely fired tomorrow. Who else? I mean, who else?
Just fire all of them. Let's see why not. And thanks to all our behind the scenes folks.
Yeah.
Jeff, Sean, Scott.
We didn't even. Hey, can they pan the
50
camera
episodes
again?
in.
Is that bad? Or can they? You said that they could. Wait a minute. Panoramic, right?
Are you gonna Back to the Future plan?
I'm gonna go back. That would be. That would be great. No, man. It's like.
What is this?
I wish some. I ask them all the time. It's okay. So, hopefully they listen to him a little bit, but maybe not. Wait, did you move it?
Way.
Okay. Great. Thanks, you guys.
All right, guys. Thanks.
Love y'all.
Love you all. You're our best friends.
You guys should make a tattoo generator. A tattoo.
I